Welcome, everybody, to the Truthful Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Vazquez, and I want to start by posing this question today. What would it take for a really stark atheist, committed to atheism, to become a devout Christian who commits their career to defending the faith? I'm excited to have joined me on the show today someone who may be best able to answer that question, who was a former atheist and spent 10 years at least 10 years in the legal field, and turned Christian and also Christian apologist at Stand to Reason, and that's John Noyes. John, thank you so much for jumping on.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's really incredible. As I was telling you before we started recording, your background has really impacted me in all the work that's done at Stand to Reason. And I was listening to one of the Stand to Reason University courses, and for our listeners, it's stru.org. It's free courses, incredible resources there. And one of your, I believe it was the reliability of the Bible, but I could be wrong. Someone could fact check me on that. But you said how you were an atheist and you had so many objections and you were just coming at Christians. And to me, that was encouraging, because, I didn't grow up in the church, but I didn't grow up as a firm atheist either. I had some agnosticism in me, so to speak. So seeing it come from the other side will, I think, really be helpful for our listeners, but also for me to shed light on how do we best communicate and show Christianity to be true to atheists. So do you mind just introducing yourself to our listeners and then detailing that journey from atheism to Christianity, and just tell us what went through your mind?
Yeah, sure. So my name's John. I live now in Southern California, up in Ventura County, kind of like the northern part of Southern California, with my amazing wife, and I've got 4 daughters, and we're living the dream, in Southern California. I work for an organization, as you mentioned, Stand to Reason, which is actually a dream job for me. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I love traveling and speaking and creating great content and working with amazing Christ followers. But it wasn't always my dream job. I mean, I didn't grow up looking forward to working at Stand to Reason, because I actually grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So I'm an East Coast guy, which comes out kind of in my accents. And then, something happened. I didn't grow up. I need to be clear about something. I didn't grow up an atheist, right? So my parents didn't teach me atheism. It was just kind of we just didn't talk about God. In my home, it was just presumed he didn't exist. Easter was, bunnies, eggs, and chocolate, and Christmas was trees, presents, and lights, and Santa and this type of stuff. So it's not like I was taught against God, at least not in an overt way. I'm a product of the public school system. The public school system, I think, teaches naturalism by default. So it kind of makes sense that if you combines my home, where I didn't talk about God at all, to a public school education where naturalism was just kind of taught, I become a naturalist. So I was a naturalist. I became an atheist in high school. Really is where my first kind of, I guess, passionate thoughts about God started happening. I started looking at reality and trying to explain the way the world was, and it just seemed I didn't need God. I thought he was a joke. I thought it was a crutch. That's what I would have said. And then in college, I really kind of developed into my atheism and became a pretty ardent atheist. I was evangelical, man. I loved to talk about this stuff. So if Jake, you were in one of my classes in college or shortly thereafter, I'd be like, hey, and I knew you were a Christian. I'd say we need to get coffee because I need to tell you how stupid you are for believing in this sky daddy.
Sky daddy.
I used all the terms, man. I can't believe you believe in an ancient Bronze Age myth book, that was written by primitive people. It's time that you evolve from those beliefs and into more current beliefs that's antiquated. And I was aggressive too. And when I met my wife, actually, I met my wife. My first night, I went to undergrad in Washington D.C. and started my professional career there, and then moved from Washington D.C. to Hollywood, California. I went from one law firm in D.C. to another in downtown L.A. And I met my wife my first night in California, and we got to know each other and eventually started dating. She plays a huge part of my story. That's why I bring her up. And I remember dating her, having her over to my house. And once I found out she was a Christian, it was like the worst thing in the world to me, because I was falling in love with this woman and I knew that there wasn't a future. And she did too. She would leave the dates crying, and because there was no future, but also because I was borderline mean to her. Like, she would come over, I'd cook her dinner, and I'd say things to her like, Rihanna, I thought you were like smart. Like I thought you were an intelligent human being. Are you telling me that you believe in Adam and Eve? Wow. That's stupid. Like, nobody believes in Adam and Eve. Are you telling me, like, I thought that you were smart? Like, are you telling me that you don't believe in evolution? Like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Evolution is a fact, just like gravity. And she couldn't answer me, a lot of the time. Like, no Christian really could. If I look back at my time as an atheist, two things stick out. One is Christians could not give me good reasons for what they believe. Every once in a while, I'd run into a Christian who knew what they believed, which was good, but not even all the time. A lot of times people believe because their parents are Christian, right? And so that's why they make that decision. It's just they're born into it. But when I always respected people who at least could tell me why they believed it. But I very rarely ran into any Christians who told me who could tell me what they believe and why they believe it and offer me evidence, right? And most of the time, my interactions with people ended in them not wanting to talk to me anymore at that moment, because I'd dig in and be borderline. I'd be borderline rude, like I was to Rihanna, And then as we were dating, Rihanna, she was a Christian. She's always been a Christian. She wanted to start going to this new church of hers, and she asked me if I go to church with her. And I had never been to church in my life. Like, I did not grow up with Christians. I don't know if my story is exceptional or not. I in the Northeast, I think at least there's a reputation of not having a ton of Christians up there, but I don't know for a fact. I just didn't grow up with any. None of my friends. I mean, I had a couple friends that might have said they were Catholic, but culturally so, like, got their first communion and got confirmed and things like this, but never participated in the church life at all. And so Rihanna, and I had never been to church. So Rihanna, she asked me to go to church with her, and I've done crazier things for the affections of a woman than go to church on Sunday morning. So I went to church with her, and it was super strange, Jake. Like, I mean, church is still a little weird for me, if I'm honest. Like, it's a little strange. I mean, you think about it, like, we go to church, most of us give, some of us give substantially to this thing that we sing some songs about some guy dying. We hang out, we listen to some guy talk for anywhere between a half hour and an hour, maybe. And we hang out afterwards, and that's it. Like, and we do this every Sunday. It's so strange. And
don't forget the coffee. It's a key part of the church going experience.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely every church worth its weight. Actually, no, we don't have coffee at our church.
Oh wow, okay.
Well, we have a teeny tiny little church, man. Actually, that's about to change. This coming weekend, we're actually starting coffee, which is going to be.
There you go.
Watch out, man. We're going to
see the numbers rise
all
real quick.
Growth. That's what No, but yeah, you get the coffee, you get the fellowship, you have fun and stuff like this. But a church and Christians were weird for me, man. They have their own lingo. Like I just said it, like fellowship. Like, who uses the word fellowship? Like, come on, man. Like, it's called hanging out, right? Yeah. And yeah, and like brothers and sisters in Christ, and you're saved by the blood and all this weird stuff. And I remember going that first time with Rihanna. I got saved at a charismatic church. So they were like,
wow, so that's quite extreme.
Yeah, well, I mean, it still is. It's a really great church, man. Pastor Dave was the pastor. He still is. And he's a good dude. And it was perfect for me at that moment, and I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was just ridiculous. There was a woman, spinning during worship. you know,
Ooh, they
like
could have started you off at like a Baptist church or something.
yeah, something. But that's not
Yeah.
God's design. And then you know,
Yeah.
people prophesying in tongues and
Mm,
stuff. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, you people are crazier than I thought. Like, I mean,
yeah.
you're absolutely insane. Like, not only are you like ignorant to like the world around you, the truth, but like you're legitimately crazy.
Mm,
And a few things stuck out though. Like, you know, the while it was strange and weird, the people were real. And that's kind of like what I was searching for. Like, I could always see through fakeness, like a veneer, and um, these people were genuine. They truly believed what they believed. Now, that's not an argument for why you should be a Christian, your veracity of belief, but they truly believed it. And not only did they truly believe it, they were authentic in their belief and they were consistent. They tried their best to live a good life, and then they were really nice to me, which was shocking. Um, and then Rihanna, she eventually wanted to become a member of this church. So I went with her to the membership classes. I was just thinking, you know, I'm going to go observe these Christians in like their natural habitat and
like a
like
museum.
yeah, like learn how
Like
to
a
better
zoo.
hunt them, you know, like learn their like the locations and like see behind the curtain is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the final portion of this membership process at this church was you had to meet with the pastor, kind of an interview. And so I went with Rihanna. It was during the evening one evening, and I went that night with like a stack. I mean, I'm talking a stack of papers with evidence, you know, as to like age of the universe and you know, evidence against the global flood and problem of evil stuff and all of this stuff printed out. And you go and you sat down, and I sat down with Ree, and she shared her story, and she has an incredible story. And then I just dug into this pastor, and I had it in my brain, like in my mind's, I mean, if I can just convince this pastor out of his Christianity, like I'll have like gotten a notch on my atheist belt, you know, like I could see like LA Times headlines, you know, like you know, atheist destroys pastor, you know, I'd be like the envy of all my atheist friends,
It's like a
my
video game.
family.
You leveled up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're leveling up, you know. You're opening up a whole new spell book or whatever, you know. It's like it'd be so great. And so I had this in my mind, and I asked the pastor all my questions. He answered some of them. He said, "I don't know a lot." Good question. You know, I've never thought of that. But at the end of that meeting, so he stands up, and we stand up, and he hugs Rihanna and said, "We'd love to offer you a membership to the church." And then he turns to me, extends his hand, and I shake his hand. And as I shake in his hand, he says, "John, we have enough members right now. Thanks for coming." And he totally rejected me,
Hmm.
which is perfect, because I know how some people that are watching this like might think like, "Hey, this is a work in progress. Like, why are you rejecting this guy? Like, don't you want him in the church? It's better that he's there hearing the word preached and the stuff." Well, no, not for me. If he had said those things like, "Hey, yeah, we'd love to offer you membership. Like, we'll see how God works on you," it would have just confirmed like a lot of what I already thought about Christians. Mainly that that he didn't care about truth. He just wanted my butt in his seat and my buck in his coffa, and like didn't care about worldview stuff. But he didn't. He totally rejected me. I mean, he didn't say I could never come back, right? I
Right.
continued to go, but he didn't offer me membership because, well, I wasn't a Christian, so I had no purpose being a member of his church. And he was
Right.
honest. But not only was he honest with me, as he was shaking my hand after rejecting me, he turned me around to his bookshelf, and he pulled off the shelf a book, and he handed it to me. He said, "John, I don't know if I've done a good job answering a lot of your questions. And I don't think I have, but I think you'll find the beginnings to some of those answers to those questions in this book. Would you read it?" And I was into reading at that point, so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll read whatever you give me." Like, I wasn't scared of digging in. I wanted to dig in and prove these people wrong, especially my wife, or she wasn't my wife at the time, but Rihanna. So I read it, and it was a book on Christian apologetics. And I had never heard that term before. And it's not like I learned that term in the book either. It was not until after I was a Christian that I learned the term apologetics, which is just merely to offer a defense, right? A defense for, in this case, the Christian worldview. So it was answering in this book. It was answering some of my questions. These like airtight objections I used to bring up, like, oh yeah, like if God is all good, he should want to get rid of evil. If God is all powerful, he should be able to get rid of evil. But evil exists, therefore God does not exist. How could a good God allow so much evil? Like, that was like my nail in God's coffin, and this book offered a fairly good defense, not just for the problem of evil, how like answering the problem necessarily, but also turning the back on me and say, okay, well, Mr. Atheist, what do you mean by evil? And then through my adventures through Christian apologetics and kind of reading books by Greg Kokel, my boss now, reading books by like Gary Habermas and like, the big guys, C.S. Lewis, all of these guys, I started being challenged in my worldview. And I realized that my naturalism, the naturalism is just simply the idea that everything that exists is the product of a purely physical process, right? Everything that exists is in the physical realm, which I thought could explain reality, explain the way the world was, certainly better than Christianity. I realized that it wasn't as good of an explanation for the way the world was as I thought it was. And at the same time, my future in-laws, they gave me a New Believer's Bible. And this is like it's a great little Bible. It's NLT translation, so it's super simple to understand. It's easy to read. It's a study Bible, so it has like cornerstones of the faith, like who is Jesus, what is sin, like this type of stuff. I read that Bible cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation, over the course of 3 months. Wow. I read it every day, morning, noon, and night. I read it on my train because I used to ride the train to work to downtown in LA. I'd read it on the train. I'd read it during lunch. I'd read it in the evenings at night. And somewhere during that process, God got a hold of me, and the way I look at it is he softened my intellect through Christian apologetics. And then he softened my heart through his word. The word of God is that interaction that I had with the word of God. I just remember reading it, the Bible, and for the first time reading it kind of for what it was worth in my mind. I wasn't reading it with an antagonistic spirit. I was just reading it because it was given to me to read, and I was just for the first time I was really curious as opposed to trying to disprove it. You know what I mean? Mm. So I came to it with a semblance of neutrality. As far as I guess I dropped some presuppositions. How about that? That's probably the best way to say it. And I remember as I was reading it, I was expecting to find a bunch of ridiculousness, stuff that was just clearly, just absolutely absurd. But that's not what I found. I found that the story that was laid out before me, especially in the Old Testament, not only did it make sense, but it made sense of the way the world is today. But it was also clear to me that the people who wrote it were intending, at least they were intending. I hadn't arrived that they were telling the truth, but they were intending to tell the truth. So, the principles laid out in Proverbs were good principles that somebody wrote down that, if followed, lead to a better life. And I realized, wait, this actually works. Oh my gosh. And then like when you're reading, 2nd Chronicles, it's like, oh, wait a second. This seems like the history of a people group at a certain time. And then you start looking up, things that are mentioned, and you realize, oh, wait, this isn't just in the Bible. This is actually corroborated outside of the Bible. Oh, wow. This is pretty nuts. And then the same thing with the New Testament. You start reading the New Testament, and it's like, that not only did the authors intend to be telling the truth, but the authors are telling the same story, not just according to Christians, like that Christian authors or contemporary authors that are Christian, but there's independent sources like Tacitus and Josephus and all of these things that all these guys that were telling the same thing. So all of a sudden you're confronted with the fact that this book that I would have said was an ancient Bronze Age myth book is actually not at all that. It's a book written by real people, to real people at a certain time in history, seeking to preserve important details about their life, whether it be historical details or principles for life or poetry or whatever it might be. And then above it all told one completely unified story, and it blew me away. And somewhere in that process, and I don't know where it was, between the digging into Christian apologetics and looking at the Bible for what it's worth, God got a hold of me. It was probably about 3 or 4 months of just digging in, reading book after book after book. And in that same vein, like you kind of asked, that's my story in a nutshell, really. But in that same vein, like, what is it that made me become a Christian, right? I would say that I was on a search to answer. I wanted actual, real answers to life's most important questions, right? Questions of origin, meaning, purpose, destiny, morality. These things that we all wrestle with. I call them the big holy cow questions of life, right? These are the big ones. And I thought I could answer them according to naturalism. And I did answer them according to naturalism. But what happens is I realized that, wait a second, these answers that I had from naturalism weren't lining up with the way the world was, which is a big deal. So I could answer them, but were my answers accurate when compared to reality, the way the world is? The way I say it is the world is a certain way. It doesn't bend and contort according to your personal preferences or my likes or dislikes. Thank God.
Right.
But the reality is an objective facet to reality. It's objective in nature. And that means reality is that thing that we bump into when we don't live according to it. And when we bump into reality, sometimes those bumps, they hurt, especially for me. Looking at things like a moral depth to the world around me. I mentioned the problem of evil before, and the kind of Christian apologetics flip the scales. Where I used to use the problem of evil as my biggest objection to the existence of God. I thought it was lights out. I realized, oh my gosh, in me even bringing this problem up, I'm presupposing something that I can't presuppose. I'm presupposing that I have an objective standard by which to judge good and evil. And I don't even have that as an atheist. So I can't even, not only can I not explain what evil is and add a proper definition to it, I can't object to the existence of God on it because I don't have it. But yet we all know evil exists. It's out there. We experience it. It's I think it's one of the most powerful arguments now for the existence of God, because it's something we all experience. Every single one of us lives a life in which we've been wronged. But I'm not sure if every one of us has actually sat back and really contemplated the question: what do we mean when we say something is wrong? Right. What do we mean when we say, like, what happened, at the gate behind the gates of Auschwitz was evil? What do we mean by that? Like, do we mean that it was just against cultural consensus or a social contract? I didn't like it, like I don't like Brussels sprouts, like, is it a matter of personal preference and opinion? No, it's more than that. We mean what happened there ought not happen. It ought never have happened, and it ought not happen again. Well, where are we getting that sense of oughtness from? Because it's more than just personal preference. It's more than relativism. And on atheism, all we have is relativism. That was just one facet of reality. I mean, there are a number of others. Existence of the soul. That's huge. That's something I don't think Christians actually talk about or bring up enough. I think we should. Because the soul is so when I say a soul, what I mean is it's that immaterial aspect of ourselves. It's something like evil. It's something we're all aware of. It's something we all possess, and we all know we possess it. It's that thing that you interact to, like, subconsciously. Like right now, I'm thinking about 100 different things other than what I'm saying. What am I thinking to? Where are those thoughts? It's more than just in my brain. It's more than just, like brain juice. There's something else going on there. But where is that? Or when you have a song stuck in your head, right? We all have songs stuck in your head, stuck in our heads. Like, if we want to get those songs out of our heads, do we mean that we need to, like, split open our scalp, crack it open our skull, and somehow find the song? No, that's because it doesn't exist like that. It doesn't exist in the material world. It exists in the immaterial aspect of ourselves, just like memories and dreams and these things. And on naturalism, I couldn't explain the existence of the soul. So I knew souls were real. But I also recognize things like souls are special. What is it that makes human beings valuable? Where we get that sense from, if not It has to be something it has to be not, it can't be a physical attribute, right? It can't be extrinsic quality. It has to be intrinsic. Like, why is it okay to gas termites but not Jews, right? Like, why do we recoil when we see injustice? Like when all of us watched the George Floyd incident, for example. Like, I hope we all recoiled, regardless of your political stance or what you think happens. I hope when we see a man dying in the streets, I hope no matter what, we cringe and we recoil. Well, why is that? Because I think it's the type of soul that we have that lends value to human beings. We're made in the image of God. We're soulish beings. Right. Animals aren't soulish. That's why when a lion kills another lion, it doesn't murder that lion. It kills that lion. Souls, they're not only are they real, not only are they special. This is a big one for me, man. They're broken. At a certain moment in time, as an atheist, I think I was still an atheist. I knew not only was the evil that I'd like to object to the existence of God on out there, right? I saw all the evil in the world. I was quick to call it out, but at a certain moment, I realized there's evil in here too. That the evil is, I am a perpetuator of evil. I am not just a victim, but I'm a victimizer. And I knew in the dark of night that I was guilty of something. We all know that we're guilty. It's funny because, like, think about the amazing lengths human beings, especially now at this time in this moment in history, the amazing lengths that we go through to try to explain away our feelings of guilt. Whether it be through medication. I'm not saying medication is bad, but abuse of it is, like medication or alcohol or drugs or escapism or we just lie to ourselves, whatever it might be. We go through these great lengths to explain away our guilt. Well, maybe the reason why we feel guilty is because we are guilty. Mm. And once we get past like I'm guilty of violating X, Y, or Z out there, we still have that feeling of guilt. And where does that come from? And not only where does that come from, but what's the solution to that? And my naturalism couldn't come close to explaining that. It had no answer to the problem of evil. It had no in the existence of a moral depth to reality. Naturalism has no answer to why people are special, and you can't even really define what justice is, but never mind seek it out on naturalism. And then there's no answer to my own personal longing and my own guilt that I have. And on all of those things, Christianity, not only does it offer an answer, it offers a solution. It offers a solution to the problem of evil, right? One day Jesus is coming back and every tear will be dried. Every wrong will be righted and true justice will flourish forever and ever. It offers a solution to not only the problem of evil, but it also offers a solution or an explanation as to why people are special, right? Made in the image of God stuff. It offers a solution to my own personal guilt. My own personal guilt as I stand in violation of the standard of God, which is perfection. And I need to be rescued because I'm in a pit and I can't get out on my own. Somebody has to answer to my guilt, and I can answer, which would take forever, or Jesus can answer. And Jesus is that solution, right? He's that rescuer that's been offered to us. And at a certain moment, I just started realizing, oh my gosh, Christianity is actually true in that it describes the way the world is. And then the Bible itself, the Bible is actually the true story of reality. That if you think about it, when we read the Bible, what we read on those pages is exactly what we should expect to see if the Christian story is true. And again, you compare it to the world, and it lines up perfectly. It doesn't mean I don't have questions. I've got a ton of questions for God, but I have, in humility, I have questions, like understanding my place.
That'll be a level up.
That'll be a level up for sure. And it's, sometimes I feel like, this is off topic, but sometimes I feel like we have these, like, this attitude towards God. Like, when I get to heaven, I'm I'm sure going to dig into God on this. I'm like, well, probably not actually. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain I'm not going to be able to speak for a while. Like for the first like 200-300 years, you know, I'm just going to be laying
Right.
prostrate like in front of him, you know, and in full and unabandoned worship.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's pretty much like in a nutshell, man. I feel like I just talked for like a half hour straight, and I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I love your story, and I have so much to add because there's a lot that I want to touch on, but I
Sure.
have to ask, what was your wife's reaction when you told her, or maybe it just came up, that you were a Christian? Or I guess it was your girlfriend at the time, but what was her reaction?
Yeah, you know, because it was like it was a steady progress of, so I don't have like a birth date, so it's not like I came home one day and was just like, hey, guess what, babe, I'm a Christian. Like she got to witness kind of the transformation as it was happening. If she were here, she would the way that I've heard her explain it before is she was just like, it was just crazy, you know, because she could see it, like like the wheels turning, and she could see slow shifts happening. And the way I put it sometimes is like my kids have had Invisalign, you know, to straighten their teeth out. And what's crazy is like it's all of these small little incremental, you know, changes. But then what happens is 20 something or 30 weeks later, all of a sudden their smile goes from completely messed up to perfectly straight. And it was the same with my worldview. It was like one little correction at a time that you don't necessarily notice on its own. But at the end of those 3 or 4 months, all of a sudden it's completely unrecognizable to what it was before, and it's all straightened out. You know, and yeah, so she would say that I think it was because it was so incremental. But she says like she was like, it was crazy. And her, of course, I mean, she was excited and happy because she knew the relationship couldn't go anywhere. And she knew like, I mean, I wasn't making her happy when I was digging into her worldview, you know, and like trying to squish her. So I think our relationship certainly improved. Well, not everything improved. I don't want to say like Jesus didn't make my life perfect. Some areas he made my life way more difficult and complex for sure. But like certain relational issues he completely solved. You know, how I was to treat her. And I mean, I was always a good boyfriend or whatever, and nice guy, but like my purpose for doing everything shifted and changed. So my affections changed. And what I was pursuing and why changed. My purpose and meaning in life changed. And if these things are changing, I mean, they should actually work themselves out in very practical ways. So the way that I spoke to her and treated her was way better, for nothing else other than just trying to disprove her at every corner, pointing out every inconsistency, you know. Oh yeah, you Christian, look, you're drunk. Or, you know, it's like, stop doing that kind of stuff, you know. And it's actually, even every time I share this story, man, I've shared it so many times, it's still crazy. It's still like, it's not like I had a radical thing. Like, it's not like, you know, I was at rock bottom and like, you know, one step away from the streets or a drug addict. That's not my story, man. My story is I was living large, man. I was working at one of the best law firms in the world, making decent money as a paralegal, literally living an amazing life. I mean, I was doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, with whoever I wanted, making okay money. I loved my life. The last thing in the world I was looking for was Jesus to mess it all up.
Right.
You know, and it was the last thing I expected to find. But that's what I found. And he did mess certain, not in a bad way, but he made some messes in order to clean them up. You know, in order to clean some areas in your kitchen, you got to make a mess first. You know, and he came into my life and made some messes in order to clean them up right.
So interesting. Sure. We actually have a more similar background than I thought.
Oh yeah.
I grew up in New York, so also in the Northeast, and not many churches. You're right. I actually just recently figured that out when I was trying to find a church for a friend in New York, and I was like, why can't I find any? I'm in Delaware now, and there's a few more churches, but it's still it could use some work. So we need some church planners out there.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I just didn't have. I was always distracted with like baseball. I played baseball through college,
Gotcha.
but I always had those. And what did you call them? The big questions. What was your
Holy
term that
cow
you used?
questions.
The
Yeah.
holy cow questions. That's
Yeah.
what really bugged me. Like death, after death, what happens? That was what really got to me. And it took something like my mother coming down with cancer
Yeah.
for
Wow.
me to really seek those answers. So I was very skeptical in that sense. And that's what led me to apologetics. But all that to say, it seems like for you, it was the worldview. Like you were ripping apart the worldview that you had like an onion, like layer by layer. My question is, what was the reason why you first started peeling back? Because
Yeah.
your attitude towards Christians was, I'm going to beat you. But it seems like there had to have been something in the middle between I'm going to beat you to, let me see if this is true. Maybe I'm wrong. So like, what's in the middle of that?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I would say there wasn't. It was more. I was starting to dive in, kind of like a Lee Strobel thing, where to try to disprove. Like Lee Strobel was married. He had his wife that became a Christian, and then he was like, "No way, this can't happen." So he was trying to disprove it, and I was very similar in that. I was very skeptical. I still am to a certain extent. So I was trying at first to disprove this stuff, but while I was trying to disprove it, I realized not only was I not finding lack of evidence, not only was I not finding the things I was expecting, like just rubbish. I was expecting to find like absolute, like just make believe stuff, not good evidence. Clearly, like we've all seen we've seen it like in the news, right? When we currently right now, our world is like polarized, right? And we can watch these like news clips, and we watch certain news clips, and we're just like, clearly you live life according to a different reality,
Right.
like clearly, on certain issues, right? And we don't need to get in that, but like I was expecting to see that same kind of thing, and both sides, by the way, would say that, right? The liberals would say like, look at this conservative news like outlet, like, oh my gosh, this can't, like, are you serious? And and conservatives say the same thing about the liberal news outlets. Well, that's the way I felt about Christianity. I just thought that I was going to be looking at it and find ridiculousness. I thought I was just basically going to find maybe internal testimony, just Christians believing this certain way, or kind of just a blind, what I would have said is a blind faith. I believe because it makes me feel good, or I believe because it offers me comfort, or whatever it might be, but not because it was true. And then when I started digging in, I realized, oh my gosh, like people have actually dug into this before me. I am not original in my objections. I am not the first person who brought up the problem of evil, right? And not only am I not the first person who's brought it up, there's been a lot of ink spilled on it. So many books have been written on it. And not only that, but I realized that Christians actually offer a good explanation. And so that's kind of like what was happening. I went in with this objective, kind of the seek and destroy mission, but mid flight, excuse me, mid flight, I realized my missiles aren't as potent as I thought. And not only that, but the enemy has superior firepower. So I yielded eventually. And let's keep in mind in the background, Jake, all of this. Conversion isn't ever merely intellectual, right? So there was a spiritual component to all of this that is but by the grace of God. So my story could have certainly, if God had willed, gone a totally different way. I could have dug into the evidence and still maintained my atheistic position. It might not have been as intellectually justifiable, but certainly before God removes the veil from our eyes, we see dimly. We're blinded by our unbelief. So it's the Holy Spirit who convicts us and converts us. And it's Christ who justifies us, not the knowledge that we have.
Right.
So during all of this, there's that going on, right? So God was using these things as a tool to kind of awaken my soul. And that's why I think the last kind of there were two final portions, right? One was the existence of the soul stuff. and my own guilt, kind of the existential problem of guilt that I suffered and that we all do. But then at the same time, I was digging apologetically into the resurrection of Jesus. And I kind of came to the, like, I looked at all the evidence that I could find for the resurrection. And I gathered all of these guys. So I think Habermas calls it the, oh shoot, what's his argument? Lacona 2.
The minimal facts argument.
Minimal facts. Yeah, I didn't know that it was the minimal facts argument at the time. I was just, I was reading these books and I was presented with this historical evidence that's agreed upon from every scholar that I could see, even if they were atheist or Jewish or Muslim. And you have these historical facts. Lacona calls them building blocks. And then I was like trying to, okay, well, let's find a naturalistic hypothesis to explain all these in light of each other, not in an ad hoc way, not spurious. Like, they have to make sense in light of each other, not just explaining one facet or one event. And I remember sitting in my apartment, like thinking, I at one point, and this is close to the ends, because I remember thinking I was kind of cooked. I remember thinking, you know what, I have the answer. I know what happened. I can explain Jesus's resurrection naturalistically. And I said to myself, aliens, in full seriousness, aliens must have come down. They beamed Jesus up to their super alien spaceship, applied their super alien technology, medical technology on top of Jesus, healed him up, beamed him down 3 days later. Boom. There. And
what are you
then
gonna say to that, Christians?
Yeah. Get out of my face. And then like almost instantly, I was asking myself, like, well, what evidence do I have for aliens now? Well, none. I have none. And so I remember asking myself, like sitting there and being like, okay, John, like, why, what is it I'm really doing here? Like, what is it I'm really trying to avoid? Because I've gotten to the place now that I'm willing to say the most ridiculous thing in order to avoid the most obvious explanation. God raised Jesus from the dead. Why is that off the table? Well, I came to the conclusion that I was guilty of everything everything I would accuse Christians of. I was presuppositional. I was not willing to drop my presuppositions at the door, which is what I was asking Christians to do. Not only was I presuppositional and not willing to drop them, but I was thoroughly naturalistic, meaning I wasn't willing to go outside of my naturalistic. I was by default coming to the table as a naturalist and not willing to drop it at all. So why did it have to be a naturalistic explanation, right? Because if naturalism isn't true, all of a sudden you drop that one caveat, naturalism, you drop that, everything makes sense. The problem of evil makes sense. The existence of morality makes sense. The existence of the universe, something we didn't even talk about, like where did everything come from, makes sense. The existence and solution to my own personal guilt makes sense. The existence of the soul, all of this stuff starts to make sense when you just drop your presupposition of naturalism. So what's more likely, that my naturalism is the problem, or that all of this stuff over here that seems to work out perfectly fine, absent my naturalism, is the problem? Well, it seems like the problem is my worldview. And so that's when I kind of shifted and changed. So it wasn't just like a aha moment. It was kind of a process over 4 or 5 months. And my wife was very pleased. My girlfriend at the time. Then almost immediately I proposed to her.
That's awesome. I mean, I love hearing those stories. And yeah, you said it, like there's been Lee Strobel, there's been J. Warner Wallace who have like sought out to disprove Christianity and ended up just having too many reasons to think that it is indeed actually true.
Yeah.
It seems like from what you were saying, and by the way, I just want to touch on the resurrection point you made about the alien story.
Yeah.
I was just teaching on the resurrection using the minimal facts argument. That's why I was so quick to put it up.
Yeah.
I was just teaching on it yesterday. And I kept saying throughout the presentation, possibility does not equal probability, because it's 100%. So easy to just throw out anything that could have happened. But it needs to be probable to the evidence. So it's amazing that you came to that conclusion of like, oh, but aliens and then this and then that. And then you're like, but at what point am I putting blind faith into these things, but then coming at Christians for having such quote unquote blind
Yeah.
faith?
Yeah.
So it seems like you were at least being humbled. I want to phrase that the right way, to truth, right? Like you were humbling yourself to the truth, and that's what you ended up seeking. Did your legal experience play a role at all? And it seems like maybe in the way you went about seeking this truth, but did that have a prominent role in your investigation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wouldn't say overtly in that I came to this as a legal minds, but like my whole world was evidence and logical arguments, and I've always been a pursuer of truth. Like even as an atheist, but like I think this is true of everybody. Honestly, like, I never wanted to be lied to, and I never wanted to believe anything false. So I wanted to know what's true and dig in, and that was really important to me. Um, and yeah, I guess the like, just the legal process as far as building a case for sure, because I did that for 10 years. From took cases from inception to trial in some of the top courts, including the Supreme Court, in the nation. So I certainly knew what it was like to build a case, and I knew what evidence was, circumstantial or not. So I knew what good evidence was. I knew the reliability of eyewitness testimony, good, bad, and the ugly. So I knew these kind of things. Like when I remember reading Romans, and when I read Romans for the first time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a legal argument! Like, like
Wow.
this is Paul is like a lawyer here making a case. It's one of the best legal arguments I think ever written." So it played a background. It played a role in the background, just because I was trained to think that way through my schooling and then my professional career. But I mean, I used it also. I used my legal mind to support my atheism too, man.
Right.
Reasoning and evidence, what I thought was evidence and stuff like that too. So yeah,
It's so good. Did you have any friends or family members who were atheists that were around you? What were they saying when you were
they
on
think
this
I'm
journey to
crazy.
being a Christian?
They still think I'm weird. For the first couple years, my family are still all, for the most part, atheists. They all thought it was super strange. I think one night I asked my sister, she was visiting, she lives outside of Boston now. I asked my sister, like, why do you think I believe what I believe? Like, you've seen radical changes in my life. I'm not the person I used to be. I'm not. I mean, my attitude might be the same. But like, there's been substantial changes, like substantial changes. And she said, "Yeah, I've recognized that." And I was like, "Well, why do you think I believe? Like, why am I this way? Why am I a Christian?" And what she said to me in my kitchen, now this is a decade ago, she said, "Well, I think it got you a good sense of community. So you have like friends and people around you." And I asked her, I'm like, "Well, what about all the friends that I'm not friends with anymore because of this? Like, what about my old drinking buddies and the people that I can't be friends with because they're just awful human beings, and like, I can't hang around with them. Or what about the people I can't hang around with because like when I hang around with them, it's not healthy for me. Like, because so I lost a whole sense, like a whole sense of community. I lost a lot of friends. That's softened. My brother's favorite word to describe me used to be delusional. He used to say I was delusional. Maybe, I don't know, like whatever, and but that's softened. And then what I've noticed is it's softened actually, I think, as I've softened. Because I used to be like super evangelist. Like, I mean, I still am evangelistic at heart. Like, I love evangelism's I just want as many people as I can influence to know Jesus. And my family is key among them. So I used to always want to be talking about Jesus. I used to be very active online, in online debates and like writing with my family and stuff like that. And I've softened way back on that because I'm more mature in Christ. I think I've also discovered God's sovereignty and trust God probably more than I did back then. Since I've softened, so has my family. So instead of being called names, what I've noticed is one of the last times I was home, it was great. I say home, I've been gone for 20 years. One of the last times I was back east visiting my family, I was talking to my brother, and where the exchange, 15 years ago, 10 years ago would have been kind of filled with statements back and forth, just not really talking to each other, just talking over each other. it was actual conversation, and where my brother would have usually, or maybe kind of responded to what I was saying with name calling, he actually asked me a profound question, and this is, I think, proof that God's moving. That he asked me, instead of calling me a name or whatever, he just says, "Hey, John, like, can you answer me this question?" I said, "What is it?" And he said, "Why did Jesus have to die? Why did Jesus have to die?" What a great question, and a fantastic opportunity for me to very, compassionately lay out the gospel, and then I said to him, "Dan, that Jesus had to die for you, because of me. Jesus had to die because we are fallen and broken, because we stand before holy and just God guilty. You know it, and I know it. I mean, we know it because we feel that sense of guilt." And then I got to ask him some questions, have a good conversation. He didn't buy it all. He didn't accept Jesus right then and there. But that's not my goal either. My goal isn't to have my family convert right then and there. My goal is just to give them something to think about. Stone in the shoe stuff is what Stand to Reason says. Put a stone in somebody's shoe. And
yeah, I haven't. I was like that too, just statement, until I came across Stand to Reason and your guys' stuff, and that's what, and Greg Kokel's tactics book and all that. That's what changed my my game plan, which has worked significantly.
Isn't that funny? I read Tactics for the first time with my wife 15 years ago, and maybe not quite. I read it when it came out, so it was close to that, and I was so changed by it that Rihanna and we ended up buying 100 copies of it and handed one to every student in our high school. We were volunteering in the high school ministry. I think this is before we had kids. Maybe we had a little, like just one girl. And we were so changed by that book.
Yeah,
so
it's a powerful book, and
it's so good.
Might as well promote it here, guys. Go and get Tactics by Greg Kokel. You won't regret it. I do have, so we're nearing the end of the hour. I do want to just ask you one more key question, and there's a lot that I want to get to as well. So maybe we can have you back on another time.
Yeah, man, I'm long-winded, bro. I'm so sorry.
No, I love this. This is exactly what the listeners want to hear. They want to hear your perspective.
Right.
Now, what would you say to an atheist who is just as hard-hearted, you could say, coming at their girlfriend and their friends and their brothers and sisters, and just going at them, trying to disprove them? What would you say to this person, even if it's you, if you could like time travel? What would you say to this person in their season about Christianity?
Yeah, I would emphasize a few things. The first would be that at some point, let me see logically, like, how would I do this? Like, in what sequence? Francis Schaeffer, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a famous author, prolific speaker. He's dead. He died in the 80s. Prophet, man. This guy, he was amazing with cultural apologetic stuff. He said that if I have an hour with somebody, I'm going to spend the first 55 minutes finding out what's troubling their heart. And then I'm going to spend 5 minutes sharing something of the truth with them. Wow. And I love that perspective, because this is a mature perspective, I think. I'm going to ask them a lot of questions. Instead of diving in with an apologetic off the bat, I'm going to ask them a lot. This is all Kokel stuff, right? I mean, this is Columbo and stuff like this. But I'm going to ask them just questions and find out what's really troubling their heart. Because I think if Christians spent a little bit more time with me, probing why I was saying what I was saying, as opposed to just like either ignoring me or coming back to me with like arguments even, they would have found out that the objections that I was bringing weren't really my objections to God. My problem of evil wasn't really a logical problem of evil. My problem of evil was that I was suffering evil in my life that I couldn't explain, and I wanted God to be there, but he wasn't, as far as I could see. I wouldn't have said it like that at the time, but now, right, hindsight's 20/20. So I'd ask a lot of questions as to why they're saying the things that they are. And then I would stress that, listen, I'm not trying to convert. I'm not trying to convert anybody. Why? Because guess what? I can't convert anybody, no matter how badly I want them to convert. So I just want to have a relationship and a conversation. And I would stress the fact that I believe what I believe because I think it's true. And when I say I think it's true, it's not in a relativistic way. It's true. Meaning better describes the way the world really is. So as I have a conversation with a former me or somebody, if we're speaking to somebody who has that atheist in their life, I'm just going to try to have normal conversations with these people that matter because they're made in the image of God. And I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask questions. And then when the time is right, I'm going to offer certain perspectives as to why I think, first, their atheistic worldview, their naturalism can't explain reality, for certain key natures of reality, like the existence of a moral depth, like where everything came from, like the existence of the soul, like even the problem of evil. So I'm going to try to show them that my Christian worldview is actually a better worldview in that it explains the way the world really is. At the same time, I'm going to try to show them, and this is like Frank Turek, right? I'm going to show them that they're stealing from God every single day. Every time that they make a moral claim, for example, they're borrowing from a different worldview. They're borrowing from my worldview. So I'm going to, in a sense, try to hold them consistent to that worldview in a winsome way. I'm not going to be a jerk about it. But so that's really where, like, I like to go. I love people, man. I just love people for no other reason than they're made in the image of God, and because they're made in, whether you believe in Jesus or not, you're valuable. You're worthy of my time and my respect and my love, and also birthed out of that love is I have compassion for people, and I know what it's like to be blind. I know what it's like to be deaf. I know what it's like to be dead. Because I was dead, I was blind, and I was deaf before Christ introduced himself to me. So I try not to get upset with people who are blind, deaf, and dead. Like if we're walking on the street, you and I, and we see a dude, a blind guy, he's carrying a blind walking stick, like one of those walking sticks, right? And he's falling over things. Bumping into things, knocking trash cans over, making a heck of a racket. You and we're not going to go over to him and like, what are you doing? Why are you so blind? Yell at him. Like,
why are you so blind?
Yeah, like, why are you bumping into stuff, you blind man? We're gonna go over to him and say, yo, I realized you're bumping into stuff. Like, you're having trouble. Like, can I help you? Like, where are you trying to get? Maybe I can help you. Do you want to take my arm? We're going to guide them. And it's the same thing with non-believers. And they make a heck of a racket, and sometimes they make a huge mess, but it's not necessarily their fault. They're blind. They're dead. They even if they want to make the right choices, they can't. They're dead in their trespasses and sins. And not only that, but apart from the grace of God, I mean, this is the best it's going to get for them. Right. This life is the best that they'll ever have. And that is depressing. So I all of this stuff you take and you just try to, okay, so I'm going to make this, I'm going to knit this to who I am. And then I'm going to allow these things, these facts to lead me to talk to the people that are in my life, even whether it's being an unbelieving, boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And on that note, I should just say, if I'm talking to somebody and they're coming to me and saying, "Hey, John, I'm dating this guy. He's not a believer." My first piece of advice isn't ask questions. It's not, get to know why they're my first piece of advice is you need to go break up with that guy.
Yeah, right.
Like, that is the first piece of advice, because my story is not an excuse to find some pagan to go date. It's not an apologetic to put on like missional dating. Right. Like I'm going to date this atheist to get him saved. It doesn't normally work out this well. Yeah. I am definitely the exception to the rule. And if you're dating a non-believer, I am terribly sorry, but my advice to you, and I do this all the time, it's really funny, like kids, because we do these reality conferences, and kids, like, they hear my story sometimes, and then they'll say, I'm dating this girl. And they're always shocked when I'm just like, well, first, I'm like, how old are you? I'm 15. I'm like, what? Why are you dating? You're 15. You know what I mean? Like, wait a couple of years, date to get married, and then my next thing is like, why are you dating somebody who's non-believer in the first place? Like, well, I really love this guy, and well, you can love him enough to say, you know what, like, I can't date a non-believer. So until you evaluate your worldview and by the grace of God, come to meet Christ. I can be your friends, but I can't be your boyfriend.
Right.
You know, you got to
There's
break
no
up.
union there. There's
Yeah,
nothing sticking that together. Yeah. And
yeah.
your wife could probably attest to that it's not an easy journey to go down.
Oh yeah, and she, like, because you don't have the whole backstory, and like, I mean, she was backslidden. That's another crazy like Christian term that nobody else uses, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, she wasn't walking the walk.
Yeah.
You know, she wasn't. But if she was walking the walk, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have dated her because I would have been like, you're lame, you know. But she was going out to the bars with me and having fun and like and all that stuff, you know.
Right.
So she was, but it's interesting. Like, if she was here telling you the story, she would say that she would say John was my low point. John was my rock bottom, is what she says. And I mean, what guy doesn't want to be some girl's rock bottom, right? But what she means by that is that she was at a low in worldview issues. She knew what she was doing wasn't going to work, and she had kind of backslid into this, you know, into this lifestyle of like not walking away from Christ, but not honoring him in her life. And then when I met her, she was like right there at the bottom and starting to trend up. And that's why she, like, fairly soon she started going to church. You know, so we had been dating for a couple months, and then she went to church, and we only dated 9 months before we got engaged. So it was like fairly quickly in the course of our relationship, I became a Christian. And if that didn't happen, the story would not be the same. So if people are dating non-Christians, a whole different topic. I'm sorry, but when that was mentioned, I was like,
but it's important.
I got to say this. But leading my evangelism, leading my conversations to people, you know, the aunt, the uncle, the brother, the sister, the husband, the wife, whatever it might be, the boyfriend, girlfriend, who aren't believers, are those things. I have a deep compassion for people and a love for people that's spurred on by seeing them as God sees them, as image bearers, people that he gave his only son for. Not maybe in the same way that he did you and I salvifically, but he still gave his son so that they have that option, that opportunity. And he loves them. And that's going to move me towards them with compassion. And as I move towards them with compassion, I'm going to ask them questions, and I'm just going to figure out what's trouble in their heart. And then I'm going to do my best through the word of God and through the, you know, God's general revelation in the world around us. I'm going to try to minister to those hurts, and in the process, hope to introduce them to Christ, you know. So that's my goal.
That's so good. Well, John, you have been a blessing. Just for me, I've learned a lot, and I know our listeners have learned a lot. And again, we got to have you back on because I got a lot more questions for you. I got a lot more topics to cover. But thank you so much for jumping on, John.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Keep doing this, man. I love what you're doing. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're trying over here. But we love you guys at Stand to Reason. So thank you guys for jumping on, and tune in next time. God bless.